My name is Tanir Oxman, and before we begin, I would like to let you know that books by authors, Roz Chast and Liana Finck, can be purchased from Powerhouse Books outside on the plaza, and authors will be signing their books immediately following this program in the rotunda downstairs. At the conclusion of the program, we ask everyone to please leave your seats so the next audience can be seated. It's a very quick turnaround. So I am so pleased and excited to introduce our two illustrious guests today. This year's Bobi Honoree Roz Chast, whose cartoons began appearing in the New Yorker in 1978, where she has since published more than 1,000 cartoons. She is the author of the graphic memoirs Going Into Town, winner of the New York City Book Award, and the #1 New York Times bestseller, Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant, a National Book Critics Circle Award and Kirkus Prize winner and finalist for the National Book Award, What I Hate from A to Z, and cartoon collections The Party After You Left, and Theories of Everything, among many others. And her latest graphic work, which we'll be talking about today, is I Must Be Dreaming. And Roz lives in Connecticut and New York. And to my direct right is Liana Finck. Liana is the author of Let There Be Light, Passing for Human, and Excuse Me, and also a children's book, You Broke It. And she's a regular contributor to The New Yorker. Her newest book, which we'll also be talking about today, is the graphic memoir How to Baby, subtitled A No Advice Given Guide to Motherhood with Drawing. She's a recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship, a Fulbright, a Mondale Institute Cultural Leadership Fellowship, and a Wallet Award, and she's had residencies with American Academy in Berlin, McDowell, and Yaddo. And as we are chatting today, you will see on the back screen images from both books, and then some New Yorker covers from Roz Chast and a couple of New Yorker cartoons from Roz Chast. So you'll see all of it on the screens behind us. So to begin, Roz, we'll start with you. And I'm trying to, in our conversation, bring together, there's some commonalities between the topic of motherhood and dreams. So things like play, attention, condensation, intimacy, private worlds, so there's lots of connections here. But to begin, could you talk about where the idea and the shape of the book came from?
The book sort of came about almost accidentally. I was actually working on another book. I was working on a book about Brooklyn. And as I was working on it, I was realizing this is just a lot more than I could do, and I was really procrastinating a lot about it. And I was doing another project on the side just for fun, which was illustrating some of my dreams and posting them to Instagram. And on and off throughout my life since I was a teenager, I've always been interested in dreams and dreaming and the very strange narrative, sort of non-narrative quality of them and the strange imagery, and I think basically the mystery of them, like not knowing what the meanings of them were, but why we dreamed at all, and what that frame of what that consciousness was. What was dreaming consciousness? And I thought about it before I knew that there was a word such as consciousness. I thought about it, it seemed strange to me even when I was a child, that you closed your eyes at night and you didn't just, blank screen. It was like suddenly you were flying through the air or doing whatever. And and some of the dreams that all the dreams I was illustrating were things that seemed funny to me. Like I had this dream, I'm not going to tell you because nothing's more boring than other people's dreams, but I had this dream that my mother was going to go into business with this guy that had to do with O.J. Simpson's glove. They were going to rent it out for parties. And it was just so bizarre I hadn't seen anything about O.J. Simpson in a long time. I hadn't thought about it, but there it was. You know, my mother and this guy, and you know, they were going to rent out O.J. Simpson's famous club for parties. So, and I started doing these illustrated dreams, a lot of them, and then I went to my editor and I said, would it be okay if I just kind of tabled this Brooklyn book and wrote a book about dreams? And so that's it.
Perfect introduction. I want to say that I think your book has disproven that all talking about dreams is boring, because the dreams in your book are absolutely not boring. And Liana, your book has disproven that talking about early motherhood and fetching about early motherhood is boring, because both of these books are highly engaging. Liana, do you want to tell us a little bit about the idea and shape for your book?
Yeah, hi. This is How to Baby, and it's every book I make, I have a kind of different process for making it, and this book came about, it's very, like the words and the pictures are separate in this book, and the pictures came first. The pictures were drawings I was making as I got pregnant and got more pregnant and had a baby and lived with the baby and took care of the baby, and I was making these drawings because I didn't have enough consecutive time to write anything, and I did the writing afterwards. So the pictures are very much like diary, trying to make sense of what was going on, and then the writing is mostly a parody of a how-to parent manual, because I was reading a ton of those. I love how-to books. I also like to make fun of them. So it's writing with illustration, like the drawings are like calling themselves illustrations, but they're really kind of the heart of the book, and the writing is just to make you laugh, kind of, I think. It's been a little while.
One of my favorite lines in your how-to manual is, "Reader, I'm sorry for confusing you." And I think it's a really good reflection of motherhood. So, Roz, in the introduction to your book, you talk about sort of all of these ideas about dreaming as a private world with its own language and logic, dreaming as the raw material of consciousness. And you have this great question, why am I always surprised by my own dreams, since you're the one creating them? And I was thinking how both of your work actually has this element of surprise in it, and I think that's why a lot of your fans connect with your work, because of this surprise in the ways that you think, and a surprise that's always changing. So just thinking about creativity, interest, play, where do both of your ideas come from? And both for your New Yorker cartoons, and just, you know, Roz, you said you were working on a book about New York, like, what are you interested in right now, and how do you figure out, like, what to work on at any day?
For me, it's something that I think it's like I don't really fully understand it, and I have to draw it to sort of help make sense of it in a certain way, and to understand what I'm thinking about it. But I don't always know until I'm sitting down and writing about it and drawing about it, what I'm thinking.
So there's a kind of element of surprise also in when you're drawing, you're surprising yourself.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah.
When you're working on cartoons versus working on a book, do ideas come from the same place for you, or very different?
I don't know. I feel like if something is engaging me, that's where the ideas come from. But there's different, sorts of things. I mean, I also work on, some commercial projects, and I have to work more within a certain framework, but I don't mind that. I think to some extent, I like having certain guardrails up. I mean, there's nothing worse than somebody saying, here's a blank piece of paper, do whatever you want to do and turn it in whenever you want. That's a little, scary.
Did Did you, and Liana, I have some questions about motherhood and creativity because I think in some ways it's overwhelming and it keeps you from the kinds of projects you want to do, but it also becomes a place of production. But Roz, for you, with dreaming, I feel like you have to be really focused on catching your dreams and be really attuned to it. So I'm wondering if that's sort of a lifelong thing. You have this amazing scene somewhere in the book, an autobiographical anecdote where you talk about having nightmares as a child and the 4 things that your mother recites to you. So I'm kind of wondering about like the trajectory of your dreams and how you got to wanting to put them in a book.
Well, as I said earlier, I kept a dream journal when I was a teenager. I kept one, I think, sometime in my 20s, and then I abandoned it. It was like on and off. But when I started drawing the dreams for Instagram, I got kind of into it, and I started paying more attention to them. And the thing with dreams is that unless you think about them right away, they're very ephemeral, and they just evaporate. But if you tell somebody your dream, or you think about it, you jot something down, it's like catching this thing. And I don't know, it's just so strange to me still.
You have lucid dreams in there too, which you kind of have to train yourself, I think, to get in.
I know that on the internet there are people who say you can train yourself to do this. I have never been able to will it. Occasionally I do have a dream where I know that I'm dreaming. I have a dream in my book that I wrote where I was on the subway and I called my husband and he said, "You sound weird. Why do you sound weird?" And I said, "Of course I sound weird. I'm dreaming." But I have never been able to will it. It just sometimes happens.
Liana, are you at all, when you're talking and thinking about motherhood, are you experiencing your child trying to tell you any dreams, or is it too early?
No, it's too early, but we talk a lot about how he will one day remember his dreams.
You do?
My kid's almost 3. Yeah, I remember my mom asking me if I had any dreams when I was 3 and being like, "What are you talking about?" And then going into my bed and making up stories and saying that those were, and like thinking that those were dreams actually. But then when you know, you know. When you have a dream, you know what a dream is. But so I'm making sure my kid knows that he's not, dreams are something he has not yet experienced remembering, as opposed to something he has to lie about. But I'm sure it will be terrible.
My kid likes to tell me his dreams. So in terms of motherhood and the creative process for you, Liana, in what ways has motherhood changed the creative process? I think a lot of what this book is about is finding creativity in motherhood, but also feeling overwhelmed by all of the things that are overwhelming about being a mother. And Roz, I'm sure you have some memories of this as well, in terms of how motherhood shapes.
Liked it all out. Not really.
I think I thank you in the back of the book for making it look fun. I might have edited that out because it was so weird, but I think it's in there. But oh yeah, I've answered this question 3 times this week, so it sounds like to me like I'm parodying myself, which I shouldn't admit. But okay, so for me, motherhood has changed things in 2 ways. One, I'm not lonely anymore. I don't know if every person experiences the same crushing loneliness that really just like defined my life until I had a kid. But it vanished. I'm sure it'll be back. But so I'm making, my incentive for making work is really different. I was addicted to Instagram. I loved the constant validation and the constant communication, and I don't need that anymore. I would love better book sales, but that's really different. It's really different. That's financial.
I
And the other way it has changed me is that I have very little time, and that I almost never have time when I'm not just on call to be the buck stops with me if my kid needs anything, even if he's at school, even if he's with his dad, so the first is very positive, the second, not so much, but it's worth it.
I was going to say, in researching for this panel, I saw that when Freud published The Interpretation of Dreams, he came out with 600 copies, and it took him 8 years to sell those. So.
He spent it all on cocaine.
It was worth it.
So I think that the pandemic changed some things for both of you, some of your interests, and some of what you were doing even before motherhood. Roz, I know you started dabbling with different kinds of art with eggs. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit dabbling with eggs. It's more intricate and beautiful than that. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit, because both of your work really addresses, I think, solitude and loneliness in different ways. Like, I think, Roz, your work isn't necessarily about loneliness, but sort of about feeling like an observer to the world. And I think the pandemic maybe exacerbated that feeling for a lot of people, but also allowed people to lean in to it a little bit. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how it shaped your art.
Well, for me, there was just a lot more time. I mean, we were home so much. I was very lucky in that I lived with my husband, and so I wasn't living alone. And I had a couple of little pods. We had a couple of friends in a town nearby, and we would kind of get together and feel like, this just feels like we're having like some kind of weird orgy, because we'd get together and we wouldn't wear masks, and because none of us were going anyplace. And we just and then my son and his wife lived in Brooklyn, and she was actually pregnant, which was kind of amazing, to have a pandemic baby. But they were fine with my visiting, and so, just there were these little pockets where I was with other people. But one thing I liked about it a lot was that there were no events, there was no socializing, like kind of in general socializing. There was just a lot of time, and I did have more time to devote to projects and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think the loneliness thing that you were talking about earlier, maybe it's from being an only child and having, parents who, my husband said, you had a wolf pack childhood. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen Wolf Pack. It's a wonderful documentary about this couple, very well-meaning couple. They had 4 boys, and they were so afraid of New York. They were wonderful parents in many ways, but they didn't want the kids to go outside and play with other kids. And so the kids they played with each other, and they watched a lot of movies, but they mostly stayed inside. And my parents did not want me to socialize. They did not trust the influence of other kids. And I kind of grew up, not really fully socialized. And I still feel that way, but now I just feel like, well, that's how that's the card, the hand you're dealt. So, and I think it does have something to do for me with, at least, if you're alone, you have to do something in your time. And for me, it was making artwork. So.
How about you, Liana?
Really similar, but from internal reasons rather than external reasons, I think. Like, my brother's a good control. He had friends. But I was always very socially awkward and absolutely needed to draw as a way to, one, express myself, and two, make people I could talk to. They were drawings.
Mm-hmm. You both incorporate animals a lot into your work. I feel like this is somehow connected. Roz, you have birds. You've talked about your birds, and they feature sometimes in your work. And Liana, you have, in a way, two dogs. You have a dog from childhood who pops up in a lot of your work, and then you have a current dog.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I wrote something about like how my childhood dog like came back and visited me in a dream, and it was so beautiful. And I got all these. I mean, to me, the dream was beautiful, and I got all these like emails being like, "Oh my gosh, did your dog die? Like your current dog?" Like, oh, it was very invasive. Go on.
no, I would just love. I haven't really thought much about the connection between artists and animals, but actually, it seems like a very natural connection, especially when you're focused or thinking about solitude. So I'm just wondering if you've thought about that at all, either of you, how animals have shaped your work or your dreams. Like I've read this article about how if you can't sleep at night and you're a middle-aged woman, the first thing you should do is ask if you have a dog sleeping in your bed because that's your problem. Right, yeah, that's why you're not getting a full night's sleep.
That's a very strange article.
It was a good answer for me to why I wasn't sleeping through the
You
night.
get to sleep with your dog.
Oh yeah.
So jealous.
Probably in Cat Fancy magazine.
But you're a bird person. Like that's not even an animal person. What is that? Like it was animals, humans, birds.
Yes, exactly. Well, they're like little dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You know,
They can fly.
they're very. Birds are.
They're long-lived.
Yeah.
Yours are.
We should have a whole panel just about birds and why they're so great.
Do you dream about them?
I do sometimes. I mean, you know, my African gray talks, and I mean, if I open up the freezer, she says, "Ice cream," and you know, so it's not just completely parroting. It's you know, when it's time to be covered, she'll go, "Good night, good night," you know.
Liana, do you think your,
My dad talks. Yes.
besides in your cartoon, but do you think that having your dog around shapes your art practice?
Yes. I've always been like intensely an animal person. I'm trying to figure out if being an animal person who actually has a pet versus one who doesn't makes a big difference. But I think I like drawing and I like animals. Like I like things that don't talk, which is maybe why I don't have a bird. We're friends. But I love how quiet she is. It bothers me that she likes to make eye contact with me. It's too much. Like, leave me alone. I thought dogs don't make eye contact, but they do.
Oh, mine does.
Oh, yeah. A lot.
So going back to this tension between solitude and community, you're both at the New Yorker. I imagine things have changed in terms of seeing other people in person, but just in terms of influence or impact or other artists, how do you feel about, like, do you have a sense of being part of a community? Does Instagram or the online world sort of shape that? What's your sense of community in terms of your art?
I have none since the pandemic, and that's the truth, and it's sad. How about you?
It's in a very abstract sense. I started when I started at the New Yorker. People still came in person, and you sort of knew the class in some ways that you came in with. And there were a few people who came in around the same time that I did, and we would all go out to lunch together. And it was, you know, a long time ago, and we would basically, on Wednesdays, we were the Wednesday group. The older guys were the Tuesday group, but we were the Wednesday group. And we would, you know, go in and see Lee Lorenz, who is the cartoon editor and the art editor. And afterwards, we would basically go out for lunch and then spend the afternoon drinking. And I was not much of a drinker. Some of these guys were, I mean, for me, like 2.5 glasses of wine was like just about, my limit. But, I could make those glasses last a very long time. And also, people would still smoke in restaurants, and I was smoking that. We would just hang out all afternoon and, talk about all kinds of things. And it was a way of, it was a kind of community. And I think that up until the pandemic, the, younger cartoonists, those people would go out for lunch. By 1990 or so, I moved out of the city and I had 2 little kids, and I was starting to just send stuff in, at first faxing and then, electronically, just because there was just no time to take a day off and come into the city. But yeah, I think that now there is no more in-person meeting, and in some ways that's I kind of think it's a little sad. Not that I'm such a big fan of the competition or other people or just humans in general, but it was a way of meeting your fellow cartoonists and feeling part of a group. But I still, it's one, I do have friends who are cartoonists and, wonderful. It's great, and I really appreciate that because it is a sort of lonely profession in a lot of ways. We are, and it's a weird one, and a lot of, people have said, oh, you have the greatest job in the world. You draw one cartoon and what a week, and they publish it, they buy it, they publish it, and say, well, it's not exactly, like that. It's really, we all turn in a group of cartoons every week, and there's mostly, it's rejection. And we do it because, we don't know what else to do with ourselves, I guess. It's, so to sort of meet other people who do this sort of pointless and often painful thing, it's kind of, oh, you're a jerk too. I see. Be desperate. I don't know.
When I started at the New Yorker, they were still in the, on 42nd Street, and then but not in a building that they had been on 42nd Street. And in those days, it was mostly this crew of men in their 80s who were Mort and Sam and Sid. And there would always be a couple of younger ones in our 20s, and then there would be this terrible long lunch. It's very expensive for someone in their 20s lunch, and you would have to go because you were sucking up to these season's cartoonists, and it was at Pergola. I mean, to me it was terrible. I don't like hanging out, but it was just, there was sherry involved, and it lasted 4 hours, and there was it was this long table where unless you're at one of the very end seats, you couldn't leave because it was against the wall. It felt like a really bad Thanksgiving. But so that was bad, and then there was a year when we moved to the World Trade Center, there was some lovely lunches in the cafeteria with just whoever wanted to come, much less formal, and that was my speed. And then I had to stop coming in, and then because I got more busy, and then there was the pandemic, and no one comes in anymore.
Both of you, I think, have these relationships with Instagram that have sort of evolved over time. Roz, you mentioned that you would put some of those streams up, and that was part of what got you realizing you wanted to create this book. And Liana, you often put single panel cartoons. I think a lot of the ones from the book, is that right, were originally up on Instagram?
Some of them.
Some of them.
Oh, I stopped, this book is why I stopped posting constantly on Instagram, because I was hoarding cartoons for the book.
So I'm just wondering about your relationship, especially to your fans or people who respond. Does that ever shape the work that you're doing, or does it sort of exhaust you? It seems like it might be exhausting to get so much feedback when you, for a time, didn't get all that feedback.
I think that the stuff that I usually post to Instagram is not stuff that I would post necessarily for the New Yorker. Some of it is, you know, I do these like photo things and drawing into photographs and things that I wouldn't do for the New Yorker. And for me, part of it is I'm just doing it because it's fun and I'm enjoying it and it's a way to learn. I feel like if I hadn't done that, maybe I wouldn't have been as motivated to learn how to use my drawing program on my iPad. So it was a way of learning, for me, to learn how to use this tool, and which I'm using more and more, not so much for the New Yorker stuff, but for other stuff. I don't know, I mean, it's the Instagram thing for me, I think because I'm an old person, it's different. It's different. I'm not a digital native person by a long shot. And so it's just kind of like, you know, I saw this funny sign, you know, sorry, that sounded like Pee Wee Herman, sorry. You know,
crediting the artist.
You know, just some weird shit, you know, that I'm just fooling around and I don't know. But it is fun because, you know, you do get feedback, and so far, every once in a while, there's somebody who like takes a weird offense at something, and
Every once in a while.
yeah, more than that. But probably you get more than that because I think your age group they take it more seriously in a certain way, and you know, people get into, you know, they really get into the whole girl clutching kind of, you know, all that stuff. And I think people my age, it's like, they don't like it, it's like scroll, 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 you know, it takes a lot to get people to say, I am so old and my bunion hurts and there's like so many other problems in my life that I don't want to like get involved in like hating on somebody I don't even know. So, I don't know.
For me, Instagram was really, really good. Also a little bad. It was good in that there's no, like, you don't have to go through any gauntlet to get something out into the world. And I think I've tried so hard in my life to like mold both myself and my work to be what is expected because I'm a little weird and I'm also a girl. And like, there are just so many. Even when I started at the New Yorker, I made all of my characters men, and then sometimes I would switch them if I sold a cartoon. But like,
Big switch.
yeah, but that's the least of it. And with Instagram, I felt like I could finally explore my own voice, or even if that was just a performance of my own voice, which is maybe as close as I am ever going to get. And it was bad in that I was like, it was so engrossing that I didn't get to put my real passion into any other projects. And yeah, and it's kind of gone for various reasons, one of which is that the algorithm prefers videos now, and it's just not worth my while to be putting all of my love into this thing anymore. And again, that's mixed. Like I feel like that's fed into me kind of going back into my shell a little bit and being more careful about what I express. But it's nice to be in your shell because then you can like come up with ideas in there that you don't have to put out into the world when they're very half-baked and then keep moving on. Like it leads to working on longer projects, and that's really nice. And I feel very fortunate to have gotten to live through this wave of like putting things out really, really fast and communicating with a million people about them, and then moves back to quiet. I think most people have quiet and it gets progressively louder and louder, and it's nice to very mid-career get to be quiet, well, with confidence. Like quiet doesn't usually come with a moment of confidence and self-understanding.
Do either of you find yourselves battling with technology just in terms of like having to hide your phone when you need to work, or do you have that sort of because I have that a lot, and with raising kids or getting yelled at the playground for having your phone up while you're supposed to be watching your supervision. Yeah, well,
Then you're built.
a lot of, yes, yeah, exactly. So I'm wondering if you have those same battles.
Yeah, it's very easy to just kind of fall down a rabbit hole. It's like, I have my phone in my studio, and sometimes I'm drawing a cartoon, and it's like I realize I'm drawing a hamster wheel cartoon, but I don't have a hamster, so I need to look up what a hamster wheel looks like. And, it's like one step into the like La Brea tar pit of my phone, and like I emerge an hour and a half later, and that's annoying, and it's my fault.
Does it bother you? Like, does it
Oh yeah.
make you angry? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too. I got a box that you can lock and time it.
Yeah, I should have given you mine. I don't have high hopes for you.
Then you have to take out the axe and just chop into it.
It's good dream material, though.
Yeah.
So both of you incorporate the autobiographical into your work, sometimes very directly. I just saw Roz flashing on the screen a dream that your son had, or about your son.
No, it was his dream.
Oh, it was his dream.
Yes, it was one where most of the dreams in the book are mine, but this one was his, and he had this dream that of a painting, and he was at art school like me, not at the same time, and it was a leg from the knee down, and projecting from this leg was this giant kind of wavy hair. It was just like coming out from the leg, and some teachers came along, and they were really criticizing the painting, and he said, "Hey, you can't criticize that painting, that's my mom's painting."
Sort of sweet.
Sort of sweet and sort of weird, but in a good way.
I have a family anecdote. This is so off topic, but I had a prankster great uncle, and my grandpa was a straight A student, and my prankster great uncle copied one of my grandfather's tests that had gotten an A once, and then he got a D on it. And then he said to the teacher, "You can't give me a D. That's my brother's work."
One of my favorite moments, Liana, in your book is when your alter ego is about to give birth. It's a very funny scene. And she brings a lot of bags to the hospital with her, and her husband takes the wrong exit off the highway. But there's this little PS on the page, and I feel like both of you are sort of masters of details like this. And it says, "P.S. He wore a suit."
Yeah, he did. He looked great. He's a good dresser. Not so practical sometimes.
Do you run into problems when you're writing about loved ones? And this goes for both of you, or
loved.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ask permission?
Yeah, when my kids got older, especially, but then I think about one of my favorite quotes from the Polish poet Czesław Miłosz. He said, "When a writer is born into a family, the family is finished."
So that quote gives you hope, like makes you feel better about it?
No, but I feel like that's, not everything that's true makes me feel better, but I do feel that it's true.
I think about that quote too, and for a long time, I was trying to not write about loved ones, and there was nothing to write about.
Yeah, I think also maybe, a lot of graphic memoirs, or, I hate when they're called novels, but, just because that's, they're not novels, but like a lot of graphic works are autobiographical. And I think part of it might be, and maybe I'm probably wrong about this, because I feel like when I'm writing about myself, it's my story, and if you don't like it, go write your own story. But if I'm writing about something else, somebody might take offense, or if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's why it's so confounding when you're writing about people who are yours and then they get mad.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute,
You're mine.
you're mine, you're my material.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing is that, like, I can't predict what will hurt someone's feelings and what won't, because sometimes a really kind story will hurt someone's feelings because it's inaccurate. It's like not how they see themselves. But that's just above my pay grade. I don't know how other people see themselves. That's why I don't write fiction or journalism.
Do you see the drawings of yourselves, like, do you connect with that as a piece of yourself or a version of yourself?
For me, it's a version of myself. Yeah.
I actually imitated, like, I took something from how you draw, many things, but one thing is that you pay more attention to facial expressions than to making the face look exactly the same in every panel if it's a comic. And that's like deeply how I see myself and how I see other people. And it really bothers, on the other side of things, it really, really bothers me when comics artists put a lot of attention into making sure the nose is always exactly the same, but their facial expressions are terribly off and their body movements are terribly off, which is a lot of comics artists. I won't name names.
Yes. Yeah, I think some people, and you get the feeling that they're kind of proud of it in a certain way. I don't know. The inexpressive aspect.
Yeah, it's so weird. Some people, I think it's kind of like
it's very cool.
Hello, where it's yeah.
It's very cool. And I don't think my work is cool.
I do.
I do too. Well, we're about to wrap up, but I want to mention, Roz, there's one very moving nightmare in your book, a moving nightmare, and it's and I think it's a little bit of a sequel to your memoir about your parents, but it's the one about your mom, and it's a dream where she calls you and she's just sobbing, and in every image she looks different, and it's really just about those tears, and you wake up from that dream. It's a very moving image.
Yes. Kind of not my favorite dream.
Yeah. But I was glad you put it out there. Both of your works incorporate like hilarity alongside these moments of just real deep emotion and sweetness and brilliance. And so I want to thank you so much for your work. I hope everyone gets to check out these books. They're beautiful and they make great gifts. I know from experience. Thank you so much to Liana and Roz. And the authors are going to be signing books in the rotunda downstairs. Powerhouse Books are going to be selling their books. So we're going to need to clear the area. But first I want to say thank you to our authors. Thank you.